I'd gotten used to mages disliking me on principle. I will know where you're going, and I will know now. Mages cannot be treated like people.
This is Templar business, stranger.
It is a losing battle. Every day, new mages are born in Theta.
Like you and me.
Every day, those born a dozen years ago come into their power.
Give up this nonsense and go and get the Templars. They are weapons.
Just kill everyone up there!
Mages cannot be treated like people. People.
People. They are not like you and me.
Cullen and I have a love-hate relationship, I think. Kind of like in the way that some people have a love-hate relationship with their parents, where you love them so much but you cannot get behind some of their actions. Same sort of thing, except instead of dealing with generational trauma, I have a hyper-fixation on a character from a video game series that started when I was 10. Here's the thing. It might be less that I have a bad relationship with Cullen, and more that I have a love-hate relationship with Bioware itself. Bioware has this bad habit of doing what they see as morally gray storytelling that is in reality more like... In the Dragon Age universe, there are things that are morally gray. There's Solus, who is pretty okay morally gray storytelling.
I will save the elven people, even if it means this world must die. I am not Corypheus. I take no joy in this, but the return of my people means the end of yours.
In reality, there's a lot less of storytelling like Solus, and instead you have a lot more storytelling like Cullen and the Templars that he belonged to. Dragon Age is a game series that covers 3 games, Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition, about a fantasy universe in which mages are an underclass along with the elves. Kind of like The Witcher, but instead of the mages having political power like they do in The Witcher, they're more like slaves. Mages in the Dragon Age universe have been deemed too dangerous to be able to handle themselves due to many historical factors. And in order to keep them in line, the Chantry, which is basically the Catholic Church, created the Templar, an order entirely devoted to making sure that the mages don't hurt themselves or anyone else. In theory.
Circle of Magi. This tower is the only place in Ferelden where mages may study their art among others of their kind. Within the high stone walls, the circle practices its magic and trains apprentices in the proper use of their powers. But the circle tower is as much a prison as a refuge. The ever-vigilant Templars of the Chantry watch over all mages, constantly alert for any sign of corruption.
The circles are where they take mages to then live out the rest of their lives, separated from the rest of society. Once you are found to have magic as a child or as an apostate, someone who was running around freely with magic before, who shouldn't have been allowed to, you are taken to the circle and kept there for the rest of your life. You are not allowed to get married, you are not allowed to have children, and if you do, those children will be taken from you and given to Chantry orphanages. Once you are taken to a circle, you are never allowed to see your parents again. You are not allowed to leave except on very specific occasions. To entertain, which is a thing that used to happen, like a freak show, to wage war, or for academic purposes. The circles are supposed to be kind of like colleges. They are supposed to be academic in nature, as well as being a safe haven for mages. But instead, what they actually are, sometimes gilded, sometimes not, prisons. The mages are deemed unable to handle themselves because of a couple historical instances. One, the Tevinter Empire, a slave-holding empire that uses blood magic, which is exactly what you think it is. Tevinter is run by a series of magisters, mages with a bunch of power who often, in fact, mostly, use blood magic and other cruel ways to keep the masses in line. Mages are supposedly susceptible to demons, which come from the Fade, a dream world separated from the reality of this universe. In this universe, magic comes from the Fade, not from the world in which we live. So because they pull from the Fade, they are more susceptible to the creatures residing within. Usually, demons. A couple of spirits, but mostly they're worried about demons. Demons who then possess the mage and use that mage's magic to create an abomination. Something half demon, half person, all evil. That abomination then wreaks havoc, or the mage uses the blood magic taught by the demon, because demons are supposedly the ones who teach blood magic, to then wreak havoc, cause destruction, do some murder, gain power, whatever. According to the Chantry's teachings, those are the reasons that mages have to be kept in check. Now, the demon thing is a little bit true. Mages are technically more susceptible than demons than anyone else because it is easier for them to open a door between themselves and the Fade. However, that door just simply has to be opened. It does not matter if the person being possessed is a mage or not.
With assistance, they can control anyone I ask. Any Templar, any noble, any well-meaning meddler.
Any person can become possessed by a demon, whether or not they are a mage. Mages are just the ones able to usually open the door, which, yes, is a dangerous thing in this universe. However, that seems more like it should be about education than anything else. I feel like shit, and I lost my things for this when I took my microphone off of it, so this is what we're doing now. Now here's the thing, you can argue all day long that mages are dangerous, you can argue all day long that the Chantry has some value because of the spirituality it gives to people, you can argue all day long that the Templars are heroes just doing what they think is right, you can argue that the abuse that some mages have dealt with is a one-off, or that some circles are better than others. The college in Navarra is said to be very much like the college that a circle is supposed to be. But at the end of the day, the mages don't have a choice. They are taken from their families, they are given to this institution, and even if there was no abuse inside of that institution, the lack of a choice makes it ethically wrong to begin with. When you give someone complete institutionalized power over someone else, it's going to attract people who would abuse it. Once you become a circle mage, you are never again allowed to see your family. You are in many cases not allowed to leave the circle premises, which for circles like Kinloch, that is basically a windowless stone tower that you are not allowed to leave except for very specific circumstances, means you might never see the sun again. Every single circle has a dungeon beneath, a dungeon that has proven to be exactly like you can imagine a medieval dungeon to be every time we've seen it in game. In Kinloch, I don't think we see one in Kirkwall, but in Kinloch especially, you go through these dungeons and they are stone with shackles, bars, and everything else. They are a nightmare. They force demons inside of children in a ritual called the Harrowing. The Harrowing is basically a ritual to prove that the mage will not be susceptible to demons and is therefore not too dangerous to allow to live. Fucking hell. In all the talk amongst the Chantry and the Templars about what the mages can do, I think it is lost that they are people. It doesn't matter if someone is deemed dangerous. They are people and are deserving of respect and ethical care. They are people, and they should be treated as such. And the Templars' entire existence is predicated on the idea that they do not deserve that care. Quite like an asylum, where anyone with any mental illness, whether they are dangerous or not, is taken and put inside to never be let go again. Or how in the United States we have a tendency to just lock up anybody with aggressive tendencies as opposed to giving them the care that they need. The Harrowing is a ritual where through the use of lyrium, which is a drug, a magic enhancing drug in this universe, the mage is forced into a small section of the Fade controlled by usually other mages to keep it in check, and a demon is lured there. The point of the Harrowing is to ensure that they are able to resist demon temptation. However, once you fail, you're murdered on the spot. 17, 18-year-old kids just killed. You spend the entirety of the Harrowing passed out with a Templar blade against your throat. If the Templars decide you have failed and are possessed by the demon, this is never really covered on what exactly that means or how they would tell other than you straight up turning into an abomination. You are killed. If you are taking too long, you are killed. This is a ritual performed on every single mage in the tower. Mages who are caught as adults and brought back to the tower, which is rare because oftentimes mages who are caught as adults are killed before they can be brought back, go through it almost immediately. Mages who are brought in as children are raised as apprentices and then go through it around their 17th or 18th birthday, once the first enchanter deems them ready. It is implied that any mage who is not deemed ready or who it is seen will never be deemed ready is made tranquil. Tranquility is another ritual that the Templars perform on the mages. It is basically lobotomization. See, the Fade is what gives mages their powers, but it is also the realm of dreams. Imagine if you couldn't dream. And I don't mean like physically being able to dream. I mean the ability to have any sort of spirit at all. Tranquility is the practice of taking a lyrium-infused hot brand and pushing it against the mage's head, severing their connection to the Fade, and in the process, severing their connection to themselves, basically tearing the soul out of their body, or lobotomization. Mages who are deemed too dangerous to go through the Harrowing, or who are seen are never going to be ready, are made tranquil. Now, it is technically illegal to make any mage who passed their harrowing tranquil, but it does happen, as we see in Kirkwall during Dragon Age 2. And even though it is technically illegal, Kirkwall is likely not the only place to have done it, in the same way that abuse by prison guards is illegal but happens all the time. The Templars basically have supreme power over the mages. Even the first enchanter is second to the Knight Commander of the Templars, who are then under the Chantry. Every circle we have explored seems to have Chantry imagery everywhere. The Templars are a branch of the Chantry, meaning if you are a part of one of the other religions in this world, the Dalish, as an example, then you are very likely unable to practice that religion, at least out loud. The Templars also hunt other societies. It is said in Dragon Age Inquisition that a lot of the Dalish who push out their mage children when they have too many do so because of fear of attracting Templar attention. There's a mage prison outside of the normal circles called Aenor. Aenor is basically seen as hell on earth. Think of Azkaban. That's Aenor. As I've said before, you are not allowed to get married. You are not allowed to have children. Why take every mage you can find, put them in a building where you can watch them all the time, pull the dangerous ones, and then make sure that they cannot have children or try to keep them from falling in love to begin with, or having sex in a lot of places. It's slow genocide. One that has been as of yet unsuccessful, as the circles were put into place between 1,000 and 800 years ago, and there are still many mages. In fact, the mage population is growing, partially because of resistance to circles, partially because magic is, yes, genetic in this world, which I probably should have said first. Magic is genetic. Even though magic is genetic in this world, it is also something that happens when you have enough connection to the Fade. Magic also skips generations. For instance, in the Amell family of Dragon Age 2, Hawke's mother's cousin is the mother of the Amell from Dragon Age Origins, who is one of the many origins you can play. She's the human mage. Her mother had 8 children, all of whom were mages. Amell is said to be the youngest. All of them were sent to circles. Whereas Lyanna, Hawke's mother, doesn't have magic, her parents don't have magic, her grandparents didn't have magic.
When I chose your father, I was bringing more magic into our line, not less. I think that's what hurt my parents the most.
So while magic is genetic, it is extremely difficult to entirely get out, especially because mages are known to escape. And mages often do have children. Wynne, one of the characters in Dragon Age Origins, has a child with a Templar, who is then given to the orphanage. That's right, children born to the mages in the tower are taken away from the mother and given to the orphanage in Chantry to be watched. Rhys, the main character of the book Asunder, and Wynne's son, is taken to the tower when his magic manifests at a young age, and they know immediately. Now, here's the thing about Cullen Rutherford. He's a Templar. In Dragon Age Origins, Cullen is a Templar. He is said to have joined the Templars around the age of 13, leaving his family behind to go join training. He chose to be a Templar. That is very distinct from a character like Alistair, who was forced into it after being forced into the Chantry at a young age. Cullen begins as a minor antagonist in the Dragon Age Origins game, specifically for the mage origin, which is Surana for the elf and Amell for the mage. I am going to continue to say Surana because I made a Surana, and fuck you, you can't choose what I do. Now, you could think Cullen is cute all you want, but at the end of the day, he had all of the power in the situation I'm about to describe. Now, here's the thing. Cullen has a crush on female Amell/Surana. This is less of a thing if you choose a male character, but we are going to focus on the female character here because she, as a character, is more important to Cullen's story and to his radicalization later on. Cullen's crush on Surana is so well known that it's one of the first things you hear about after the harrowing portion of this origin. Because yes, this game does start you out in the harrowing, so trauma! Everyone has trauma! Turns out, Cullen was chosen to be the Templar holding the sword against your throat during your harrowing for obvious reasons, because it's well known that he had a crush on you. And in fact, Cullen insinuates that that is the reason that he was chosen, to be the one able to kill you in order to assure that he was loyal to the Templars, would not betray them for you. Now, here's the thing. You can think Cullen is cute all you want. I think Cullen's cute. I think his little crush is a little bit adorable, and I've been a Cullen fan since 2012, so fuck you. But here is the thing. Cullen has all of the power here. If he wanted to take advantage of Surana, he could, and there would be very little consequences, even if Gregor found out. Gregor, the Knight Commander in Kinloch, is portrayed as someone who, while fair, does not trust the mages at all compared to the Templars. If Cullen wanted to take advantage of her, he could, and there would be very little consequences, and it's very unlikely she could really say no. If he had been to push the issue, if Surana had said yes, there would have been an undercurrent of power in this dynamic. Because technically, Cullen can have her put in the dungeon or anything done to her at any time. All he has to do is say he was practicing blood magic, and boom, that would be it. Now, technically, you could say that he would never do that. Why would he? He seems to be a good guy, and he is. He's also, though, 1920 right now, at this point in the game, and he is infatuated with her. And here's the thing, even if he would never do such a thing, which I like to believe of him that he would never do such a thing, there are still other Templars who could punish you for Cullen's crush. And you cannot tell me that they wouldn't, because after all, they had him hold the sword to her throat during her harrowing. If that's not a test of loyalty, I don't know what is. Other Templars could have had her made tranquil or killed just to keep her from being a distraction to another Templar. Cullen holds the power, and that makes him a minor antagonist. Now, when you do push the issue, which you can flirt back with him, which is a choice, but he runs away rather than actually deal with this, which I think is actually kind of adorable. But he also says, if you push the issue of whether he would have killed you during your harrowing, he says,
I would have felt terrible about it. But I serve the Chantry and the Maker, and I will do as I am commanded.
Hey, what the fuck? So you would have killed her. You would have killed her. You would have killed her? You would have chopped her little head off if Gregor had told you to? You fucking freak. She's so cute. She means so much. Oh my god, she's so smart and she's so cool. I'm gonna take this sword and I'm gonna put it through her goddamn skull.
Female Surana / Amell and Cullen is a very good example of how much power the Templars hold over these mages. There is no escape for them. If Cullen had wanted to push the issue, if someone else had wanted to push the issue, she couldn't leave the tower. She can't get away from them. There's this big tower with a lot of people in it, but you still run into Cullen a lot. So, you know, might be this isn't a good thing. And that's before the man is radicalized.
I am beyond caring what you think. The Maker knows my sin, and I pray that he will forgive me.
Cullen's story is one of radicalization. Cullen joined the Templars willingly, meaning he was at least somewhat susceptible to the Chantry's propaganda on mages. If he did not believe mages were dangerous at all, he would likely not be a Templar. No one forced him to do this. Now here is the thing. During the events of Dragon Age Origins, the Circle is attacked from within by a man named Uldred. Uldred does blood magic and uses a pride demon and his lackeys to torture both the mages and the Templars in the tower, basically trying to destroy it from within. He drags the mages upstairs to the harrowing chamber at the top of the tower and tortures them until they become abominations too. The Templars he sicks demons on, using their wishes, desires, and their fears against them in order to basically turn them into monotonous puppets. And Cullen is the only survivor. He's the only one. Out of everyone who didn't make it to the bottom level of the tower before it ended up being sealed off, because that's what Gregor does. He seals off the tower and gets ready to start killing everybody in there before the warden comes and basically fixes it all. Cullen is the only survivor up there. He's just watched all of his friends, his colleagues, whatever, die, be tortured and turn into puppets through their fears, and had those same desires and fears used against him. In fact, his infatuation with Surana is what they used to try and break him.
Sifting through my thoughts, tempting me with the one thing I always wanted but could never have. Using my shame against me, my ill-advised infatuation with her. Ugh, a mage, of all things.
Teasing him with ideas of her being his, of him being hers, of a life outside of this circle, of a life within this circle. We don't exactly get exact details, but we know it was a days to months-long process of slowly trying to torture him, of slowly trying to break him. I'm not going to undermine how traumatic that would be. It's absolutely insane. I don't know if I would survive it. It shows Cullen has an extreme sense of will to survive, but in a way, they do break him. Now, what Uldred did to the tower is absolutely despicable. I'm not going to deny that. However, Cullen's response during a traumatized moment of terror and fear, it makes a little bit of sense. After all that Chantry propaganda likely pushed into his head from a very young age if he joined the Templars so young, he's been shown basically now the worst of what mages can do. This is the worst case scenario. This is horror and terror. This is what the Chantry says the Templars are there to protect everybody else from. And they weren't able to do it. Not really, the Warden fixes it. And when the Warden finds him, he tells her I'm gonna use the word her, to kill every mage remaining. Because none of them can be trusted. Because they've all been tortured too.
They've been surrounded by blood mages whose wicked fingers snake into your mind and corrupt your thoughts.
His hatred of mages is so intense. The memory of his friends' deaths is still fresh in his mind.
You have to end it now, before it's too late.
Now, a 19 or 20-year-old in this situation, this makes total sense to me, and I'm not really going to fault him for calling for such a thing in such a moment. I mean, I'm going to fault him. I'm going to be like, hey, dude, what the actual fuck? Like, who makes a suggestion like that? But at the same time, I'm going to be like, this makes total sense. If I were in a situation where I had been tortured by a people I had been told were evil for years and years and years, for a minute, I might also be like, hey, fucking hell. Having justified reasons for being radicalized does not make you any less radicalized. And Cullen, when he has a chance to stop and think, it doesn't change.
Of course he'll say that. He might be a blood mage. Don't you know what they did? I won't let this happen again.
See, the demons did break Cullen. They just broke him in a different way from his peers. Where his peers became basically puppets, Cullen became the proper Templar. And that is a change all of its own.
I was at the Circle Tower in Ferelden during the Blight. I saw firsthand how Templars' trust and leniency can be rewarded.
Trust and leniency? Is that what you call it?
I still have nightmares of Uldred's depravities.
Knight Commander Meredith is one of the most radicalized characters in the entirety of the Dragon Age series, and definitely the most radical Templar. She runs the Circle in Kirkwall, a place where the Circle is a repurposed actual prison from the days of the Tevinter Empire's presence in the area. Where Gregor was a major villain in that he simply allowed abuse to happen under his watch, or pretended he didn't know, and mainly because, like all Templars, especially those in the highest positions of power, continued the perpetration of 1,000 years of oppression, Meredith is 1,000 times worse. Gregor at least listened to his first enchanter, Irvin. Meredith is constantly looking for ways to make sure Orsino and his mages are fucked. Meredith, especially towards the end of the game, is foaming at the mouth to get rid of as many mages as she can. Anytime there's any sort of infraction in Kirkwall by a mage, she cracks down intensely, and the mages in response resist, and so she cracks down again. And this is a continuing cycle that leads to the destruction of Kirkwall itself. The first interaction we ever have with a Kirkwall circle under Meredith is with Carl, Anders, one of your companion's friends, who he was sending letters to. Carl is made tranquil, a harrowed mage, lobotomized, for the crime of sending letters. For most of Dragon Age 2, Cullen is Meredith's most ardent supporter. He rises from his low position in Kinloch to being Knight Captain one step under Meredith within a year. Part of this is due to the fact that he has a very competent military mind, as we see later in Inquisition. However, another large part of it is that Meredith wanted someone to agree with her. That mages are to be feared and cannot be allowed any leniency. We first see him abusing a recruit to get answers from them, saying that he knew he was up to something, but he didn't know what. This Cullen is very obviously, from the moment we see him in Dragon Age 2, a very different person to the one we met in Dragon Age Origins. There are still bits and pieces of the original Cullen that we see during the mage origin in this Cullen, when he softens, talks about, say, Surana or Amell, but anytime mages come up, Cullen is a hardened Templar now, through and through. You have a very infamous line by Cullen in this game.
Mages cannot be treated like people. They are not like you and me.
Which is just, holy fuck, man.
It's my duty to hunt down apostate mages, but I do so with a heavy heart.
At any time, any mage could become a monster, from the lowest apprentice to the most seasoned enchanters.
Anytime you meet with Cullen during Dragon Age 2 and mages come up, you are basically reminded that he no longer has any sympathy for mages at this point.
Perhaps you're right. Perhaps mages need better education as to why the Chantry functions as it does. Perhaps they would not go against the will of Andraste herself. I will look into it.
At least during the first 2 acts, there is nothing in him but contempt for his charges. In Act 2, we come across a Templar named Sir Ulrich. Sir Ulrich has a plan to make every mage in Kirkwall tranquil, calling it a final solution.
Yeah. Jesus fucking Christ. Dragon Age has some anti-Semitic overtones that we're just gonna have to kind of paper over in order to even get this fucking thing done, in order to even get this fucking video done. I could do an entire other video on the anti-Semitic origins of a lot of what happens with mages and elves, but for now we're just going to continue on with our discussion of Cullen because he's the focus of the video.
Now, Meredith actually discounts this opinion, which is shocking to me, but Cullen, when you ask him about it, gives vague support for the notion.
Your Sir Ulrich was working on a plan to turn all mages tranquil. It sounds like you support this.
The Tranquil ritual was created as a mercy so that mages need not be killed out of hand for a threat they might pose. There is an argument to be made for applying it more widely.
Are you going to listen to this? He's no better than Sir Ulrich.
Do you think it's easy to contain a mage who truly wants to deal with demons? We have done our best. But many mages have made it clear they view the ritual as no better than death. They want no controls on them at all.
Here's the thing about Sir Ulrich's tranquil solution. It is implied through interactions you notice among mages in the gallows courtyard, because the one thing that Kirkwall has over Kinloch is that you can see the sun. That he will make women tranquil for minor infractions, and then they belong to him and will do anything he wants. Because tranquil mages are basically drones. Yes, it is implied to be exactly what you're thinking.
Please, no! Don't make me tranquil. I'll do anything.
That's right. Once you're tranquil, you'll do anything I ask.
Holy fuck. Okay. Kirkwall is a cesspool of wrongs against the mages before Cullen even gets there. Supposedly, stuff like this has been happening for years. Kirkwall is known across all circles as the worst fucking one. It's bad before he gets there, and it gets worse when Meredith gets super magic drugs later. And Cullen is not just anyone in the system. He's like a step away from being completely in charge and was propelled up there so that Meredith had a crony. He is her knight captain, and he never puts any checks on Meredith's power. Not once. Not even in Act 3 when she's going cuckoo in the fucking coconuts and he can see it.
The Knight Commander. She is not there yet, but I do not have to ask where the rumors come from.
I believe he admits this later, he's either blind or afraid or believed in her for the majority of that time. He believed in her and believed that she was doing what was right because he just truly fucking didn't like fucking mages. The only notion we get of Cullen disagreeing with Meredith is during the end of Act 3. Now, here's the thing. The end of Act 3, spoilers for Dragon Age 2, but Anders, the same companion from earlier, for reasons we won't get into today, blows up a chantry? He basically blows up a church, and you accidentally have a hand in this because you help provide him the materials under the guise of creating a potion to basically help him with his condition. And supposedly at this point, you trust him, so, you know, he tricks you, basically. Whether or not how close you are to him, he tricks you into helping him create a fucking bomb. Dragon Age 2 is an absolutely nuts game politically. Like, the entire game is basically the politics of this world coming to fruition and the consequences for people at the bottom rung of the ladder and how you see that as you climb that ladder. Dragon Age 2 is a great game. It's just really good. Now, this is supposedly where Cullen's de-radicalization begins. There are 2 times during this entire section where you can see Cullen begin to separate himself from Meredith and realize, holy shit, maybe she's evil. And maybe we're evil, holy fuck. It's the beginning of that realization moment. Now, at the end of the game, you can side with the mages or the Templars. Basically, Meredith decides to annul the entire circle, to kill every mage in the circle for Anders' actions. Anders is not a circle mage. Anders has actually nothing to do with the circle at all here, other than like his underground rebellion movements, but he doesn't even go here. He's just a different mage. He's an apostate. He's not really here. He's not here for you. He's not here for me. Anders has nothing to do with the circle whatsoever, and all of the mages there have absolutely nothing to do with it. So Meredith, after Anders blows up the chantry, decides to kill all the mages. And you can side with the mages and try and help them, you know, not die, or you can side with the Templars and, you know, help them commit genocide, which
there's an obviously correct answer here. Like, I feel like you haven't gotten this far in the video if you don't think that the mages are, like, you know, the correct thing. And this brings back our discussion earlier about morally gray storytelling. These are not supposed to be equal choices, but they're not technically supposed to be unequal choices either. Does that make sense? They're not equal choices, but it's not like the writers were trying to punish you for choosing the Templars. In fact, if you choose the Templars, you become the champion of Kirkwall, and your friends don't immediately abandon you. So
That's crazy. If you make them loyal enough, they won't abandon you. Even Anders, who you can then make fight for the Templars, technically. So that's insane. But anyway, fighting for the Templars in this scenario is an irrevocably evil action, and the game does not treat Hawke that way ever, and it boggles my mind. Anyway, if you side with the Templars, you come across this one situation later where 3 mages surrender to you, basically being like, hey, Kirkwall's kind of gone to shit because a chantry blew up, there's mass carnage everywhere because, burning fucking wreckage has fallen across the city. People are dying because the Templars are trying to kill all the mages have used that point to escape the gallows and are trying to, escape, giant men with swords trying to kill them. So, you end up with this situation where some of them are turning to demons because they have no other choice if they want to survive, which is very common with abominations in this universe. I would say, and this is an estimate based off of noticing story beats, I would say anywhere from 60 to 70% of all abominations are probably caused by the Templars because they either A, are caused by the harrowing, or B, the mages feel so cornered and go into survival mode, and so they reach out to the only option they feel is available to them, which is demons. Anyway, these 3 mages surrender to you, and I'm gonna let the clip play quickly.
But let us live!
No! This circle is beyond redemption.
Knight Commander, surely the rite of annulment requires something more...
It requires my word, Cullen. Do as I've commanded.
I want to hear what the Knight Captain has to say.
The rite has always been a last resort, when every mage involved was beyond salvation. The situation was far more dire in Ferelden's circle, and yet many mages were saved. We could still do as much here.
Objection noted, Captain.
Is there a way to tell if they're blood mages?
There is not.
But they haven't resorted to it, even to save their own lives. Perhaps if we watch them carefully, we...
And if they hope to escape by playing innocent, will you accept that responsibility, Cullen?
Yes. I believe that's what being a Templar is about.
Here's the thing about that. Cullen says, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we shouldn't kill these mages who are surrendering to us. Maybe that's not what a Templar is. Maybe the point of a Templar is to, protect these people. But you can be like, LMAO, nah, and kill them. And Cullen's just gonna stand there while you do it. Just okay. And it's just okay, great. Love that for you. Absolutely beautiful, Hawke. You as Hawke can decide, yeah, kill him. And they'll do it. And Cullen won't stop you. He won't try and save these mages. He's just well, I said my piece. And it's okay, dude. This is the only scene we have of him doing such a thing. Standing up against Meredith, and he doesn't even go all the way. He doesn't try to protect these mages from Meredith, you, and his fellows. Instead, when Cullen finally turns his sword on Meredith during this whole situation is when Meredith goes after Hawke. Whether or not you choose the mages or the Templars, at this point in the game, Meredith has completely lost it, sees you as an enemy no matter what, and tries to kill you. And this is when Cullen breaks. Not for those mages, not for any other mages, not when she decides I'm going to kill everyone. None of this stuff makes him crack. What makes him crack is him going after Hawke, someone who is arguably partially at fault for this situation, because that's not what we agreed to do. Don't get me wrong. I love Hawke. Well, I love my Hawke. And I love Anders. I really do. I think Anders was right. I don't think he was maybe right to blow up a building with people in it, but that's just a anti-terrorism thing more than anything else. But I do think that he is right in everything else. Fuck you. But damn, Hawke helped make the bomb and has sheltered Anders for years at this point. You can't get rid of Anders for the story purposes, but if you're taking the Ludo narrative correctly, that means that that means that Hawke, no matter if he hates him or loves him, sheltered Anders from the Templars for years, leading to this situation. Even after Anders starts getting really sus in Act 3, so no matter how you slice it, Hawke is partially responsible for all of this. And when Meredith goes after Hawke, is a step too far? That's when it's a step too far. Not the baseless murder of an entire giant thing of people. It's with Hawke. Okay. I get it, and I get why, story-wise. It's a huge thing for the story for Cullen to break from Meredith at the climax. However, if you take it for Cullen's personal story, it really undercuts where they're sending him for Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, they might not have known what they were going to do with him for Dragon Age Inquisition, because, again, all of these games feel like, up until the end of Inquisition, it felt like every single game was made not knowing if they were going to get a sequel, without the idea of the overarching plot of these games. So a lot of stuff has been retconned. For instance, Cullen, at the end of Dragon Age Origins, originally kills 3 mages because he was scared and heard them murmuring in dark corners, and turns out they were just studying together. And he kills 3 people and is forced into early retirement and sent off to the place where they put lyrium sick Templars, which we'll get into lyrium sickness in a minute. Just remember that lyrium is a drug. But, you know, they retconned that in order to have him in Dragon Age 2 because holy shit. And also, it was just a hugely violent action that I can't believe no one stopped him. So they retconned that. So I have not been treating it as a part of Cullen's story, but it does show the amount of back and forth that Cullen's radicalization has had in Microcosm. But going after Meredith once she finally goes after Hawke is not the act of someone who sees mages as people now. It is the act of someone whose morals predicate to not betray people they've made deals with. That's the act of this specific person who is an influential political figure is worth something, because Hawke by the end of the game is an influential figure in Kirkwall. Now you could spin it as him seeing the last few hours and going like, and this being a breaking point, which yeah, and that's probably what the intent is. However, even in Inquisition, when he talks about this part, there's not really much about helping the mages. It's Meredith went crazy, not Meredith tried to do genocide. These are not the actions of someone who is starting to really de-radicalize. Or if they are the very beginning. Cullen goes from this to being supposedly completely regretful of his actions within the year that it takes from the end of Dragon Age 2 to the beginning of Dragon Age Inquisition. The timeline of his de-radicalization is very short, and it is not enough. It's too little, too late. Helping Hawke in a final battle is too little, too late from Cullen as a character. And it does not set him up to be a character you can empathize with later on in Dragon Age Inquisition. You have had like 8 years to be like, holy shit, she's going batshit crazy, and you didn't do anything during that time, and he suffers no consequences for this, and I think that's what pisses me off the most.
Your kind killed the most holy. Lies. Your kind let her die. Shut your mouth, mage!
Enough!
Knight Commander!
That is not my title. We are not Templars any longer. We are all part of the Inquisition.
Inquisition really wants us to believe that Cullen has changed. It really wants us to be like, maybe he's not exactly anti-Templar, but he's definitely pro-mage rights now. And I want to believe it so bad. I do. I really do. He's a sweet character. He's so much fun. He was already a fan favorite, which I think is probably why he's in every game. He's a fan favorite because he's cute. He's got the curly hair. He's basically Alistair too. And I want to believe it too. He has so much potential as a character, and you very rarely see a redemption arc done right. You very rarely see a life after hate sort of character, and I think I want to see more of those. I want to see more characters who have changed from their supremacist viewpoints, because it might show to, you know, white supremacists, homophobes, things like that, that you can change. And, you know, some people might not forgive you, but that work is worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we don't see in fiction enough people facing the consequences of their actions and learning from them and showing how useful that is. Like, a true life after hate character isn't something we see very often, and I want to see it more. Cullen had so much potential. It's not funny how much potential he has, and they fucking didn't do it. He was basically in a state-sanctioned hate group. But what's even rarer, and what Cullen really doesn't have to do, is face the consequences of his actions. Cullen has a couple lines in Inquisition about how he's chill with mages now, and how he distrusted mages in the past, and how that was wrong of him.
I've seen the suffering magic can inflict. I've treated mages with distrust because of it, at times without cause. That was unworthy of me. I will try not to do so here.
You still regret the man you became after leaving Ferelden?
After the Ferelden Circle, I thought all mages were like the ones there.
Your fear of mages blinded you. Lives were lost for that.
A truth that haunts me. It's not yet enough. The Inquisition is my chance to atone. I will see it through.
But he also still advocates that you go to the Templars, because again, you have a mage Templar decision, which again, the Templars are evil. I'm pointing that out again in the game, and he is the one who's like, you should go to the Templars because I don't trust the rebel mages.
And I still disagree. The Templars could serve just as well.
We need power, Commander. Enough magic poured into that mark.
Might destroy us all. Templars could suppress the breach, weaken it, so...
Pure speculation.
I was a Templar.
I know what they're capable of.
And it's like, how? How can you be pro-mage now? How can you see all the abuses the Templars have gone and been like, we were wrong to do so, and I distrusted mages in the past, and then continue to distrust mages? His actions do not match his words.
Hi, editing Ren. As I was going through Dragon Age Inquisition and trying to find a lot of the footage that I needed for this section. By the way, thank you to Dana Ducci and Fluffy Ninja Llama, whose things should be up, cards should be up here somewhere and will be down in the description. I got a little footage from their YouTube channels, which have been up since like 2009, 2011, from the first games coming out, and I've been watching them and going through their footage of all the Dragon Age games since I was like 11. So I appreciate you guys a lot, and if you like this, you should go check them out. They've got like all of the footage that you could possibly want. But a lot of as I was going through to get my own footage, I realized that at no point does Cullen technically say he is pro-mage or anti-circle specifically. He states that the circles don't work. He states that he treated mages unfairly. His lines basically imply that he now sees mages as people and not all just monsters waiting to kill you, but not necessarily that he doesn't believe in the Templars or the work. And a lot of my work in this last bit that you just watched was predicated on the idea that he is a mage supporter. And that's not technically true now that I've gone back and re-double-checked while replaying Inquisition to get the footage that I needed. However, I don't think that realizing this makes it any better. If you've gotten this far in the video, you've probably noticed that all of my ideas are based on the predication that the Templars are just evil, that they are an evil institution that does not deserve your pity. Maybe individuals within that system who have suffered under the Templar yoke do, but they are complicit in an evil system, and that makes maybe not the individual evil, but their participation in it evil. Cullen still supporting anything like the Circles and anything similar to the Templar cause means that any redemption he has is limited, because putting stock in the Templars and supporting them outright is the same as perhaps you're not a soldier in the dictatorship, but you support the dictatorship. It's the same level. I think it's fine to be de-radicalized and still sympathize with those who are still sucked in. However, if you recognize what you did to mages was evil, and you recognize the system underneath that as being wrong to an extent, then you have to go the rest of the way. And having Cullen be a romanceable character who is just, as I'm going to say now, everyone just kind of treats him fine, inside of Inquisition, who is not questioned on his ideals at all, undercuts his redemption arc and his de-radicalization. He is still sucked into this system, and until he gets away from it, he will not be a redeemed man. I think what bothers me even more than basically talking a big game but not fucking stepping up to the plate is that he also never faces any consequences. He hasn't faced a single consequence of what he did to mages and what he allowed Meredith to do to mages. He has one specific Templar-related consequence, and that's Lyrium. Lyrium basically absolutely destroys Cullen's life. He quits Lyrium, which, in order to keep the Templars in line, the Chantry plied them with Lyrium, which is highly addictive to non-mages, and over time ruins their brain function, making them more paranoid and more aggressive, which is another reason that the Templars are usually abusers, because they're being basically drugged for years on end, and it makes them paranoid and basically shit around every corner. In fact, a huge version of that is what happens to Meredith. She gets basically a red lyrium idol, which basically gives her, you know, even more exposure than the normal Templar. And after that, she goes absolutely batshit nuts. So we know the effects that lyrium can have, and Cullen stops taking it as a show that he will not be a Templar any longer, that he is no longer leashed to the Chantry's ideas on mages, and that he will no longer allow those ideas to control his life.
Kirkwall's circle fell. Innocent people died in the streets. Can't you see why I want nothing to do with that life?
And that's a really good thing, like, overall. And it's absolutely insane. And you can watch him struggle basically with addiction throughout the entirety of the game.
Maker's breath. I didn't hear you enter. Forgive me.
Cullen, if you need to talk.
You don't have... I never meant for this to interfere.
And it's very important. He gets headaches, he has problems, he goes through extreme withdrawal symptoms and nightmares, and he basically escapes the vicious cycle that helps turn Templars into monsters, with the apex of that being the Red Templars in this game, who basically all have what Meredith had, and they turn into giant nasty creatures, basically like abominations about it. And well, yes, this is a big consequence. It is a consequence of him becoming a Templar, of him believing the Chantry. It is not a consequence for how he treated mages. Samson is one of the Templar antagonists in this game, basically because of his lyrium addiction. He goes with the main antagonist who basically gives him superpowered armor, and he helps undermine the entirety of the Templars. Now, Samson is actually an interesting character because he was kicked out of the Templars, and his lyrium withdrawal symptoms got so bad that he turned to Corypheus, and this all happened because he was helping mages. He was ferrying out letters for them. He saw mages as people. Cullen is the opposite. He's dealing with delirium addiction now. He's dealing with the withdrawal, but he has a support system and friends, and because of that, he is not doing what Samson did, but he always distrusted mages, and that makes a lot of this lip service. Cullen constantly talks about how Samson disgraced the Templars, never mind how the Templars are already a disgrace. There is not one time in Inquisition where a mage is like, I don't want to be part of the Inquisition because I was in Kirkwall and Commander Cullen was there, and I don't trust that. Or where a mage shirks away from him, or that it makes, like, talking with the Mage Rebellion difficult for him. There is never even a moment where Fiona is like, I have mages who don't want to work with you. Not even lip service is done to the fact that a lot of mages, especially those mages who were from Kirkwall, which there are a lot of, would see Cullen and be terrified. There's not even a point where a mage can be like, hey man, fuck you. We just ignore it, or they never meet. There are no consequences for him or for the Inquisition from the mages, or from even other Templars for what he has done and what he has been a part of for the last 10 to 12 years. And that pisses me off. There are no real consequences for him when it comes to mages. In fact, you as a mage can romance him, but you can't be like, hey man, you make me really uncomfortable because you were a Templar. I mean, you can, but it's basically like one line, and it's aggravating as hell. Cullen in Inquisition is portrayed as a trustworthy and worthwhile man who most people who meet him believe in. The other Templars respect him. The mages who have come here respect him. People respect Cullen. Why? Why is everyone suddenly chill with Cullen? I get it to an extent, but like, at least in the early parts of the game, I feel like there should be some mages who have now come to the Inquisition who, Cullen has this part where he's like, we're all part of the Inquisition now, and that mage can't even be like, fuck you. And you can't even explain to Cullen that there's a big difference between like the Templars who have given up being Templars to come here and are trying to follow in Cullen's footsteps, and the mages who are here because it is an away from the fucking war going on and is a way to keep themselves safe, or because they actually believe in it. There are two very different backstories, and they're treated basically equally, and I hate it. I understand that for the game to move forward, they needed someone in your inner council, because that's where Cullen is, to be pro going to the Templars instead of going to the mages. But it couldn't be Cullen. And if it is Cullen, it can't be Cullen for the reason that, you know, the mages can't be trusted and the Templars can. It has to be a separate reason.
And I still disagree. The Templars could serve just as well.
We need power, Commander. Enough magic poured into that mark.
Might destroy us all. Templars could suppress the breach, weaken it, so...
Pure speculation.
I was a Templar. I know what they're capable of.
Maybe make it that he is worried over the Templars and doesn't want them to do something bad, based off of what just happened in fucking Val Royeaux.
The Templars have returned to the Chantry. They will face this Inquisition, and the people will be safe once more.
It's a shame the Templars have abandoned their senses, as well as the capital. We must look into it. I'm certain not everyone in the Order will support the Lord Seeker.
Or the Herald could simply go to meet the mages in Redcliffe instead.
You think the Mage Rebellion is more united? It could be 10 times worse.
But it cannot be Cullen for his redemption to make sense. He has voice lines about how the Templars have become disgraceful, but it discounts the fact that the Templars were always a disgraceful organization. With Cullen, it's always Meredith was insane, or I lost sight of myself. Never, the Templars are wrong. The one time he says that the circles don't work, it's because the mages won't accept them, and that they've shown that. That's not the same fucking thing as, you know, the Templars were wrong. And again, I get that he might not think that entirely, but it undercuts any distrust he might show of the Templars now. Other small details include the fact that in the year and change between when Meredith went insane, and when the Inquisition showed up, there really isn't much portrayal of Cullen during that time. Cullen should talk more about his time post-Meredith. Did he end up having to work with mages more because a lot of the Templars had gone cuckoo gaga? How was trying to set the circle back up? How was trying to clean up the mess that Meredith did? How many mages did he have to work with in order to make that work? How was the year between when Meredith went insane and when the mages really rebelled? Did his interactions with mages then, without Meredith coloring his view, change a lot of his opinion? Have him talk about that. He doesn't really talk about it besides like, well, then the Inquisition showed up. It cannot be as simple as the Inquisition showed up for it to make sense. Dragon Age Inquisition has a lot of small details that just sort of undercut Cullen's redemption as a character. He needs to face consequences, or he cannot be a redeemed character that we are all just fine with.
Any thoughts on the people here? Commander Cullen came to mind.
The commander is an intelligent, cautious man. I'm grateful he's in charge of our standing army. Still, he does sometimes resemble the man with a hammer to whom everything appears as a nail.
Cullen's redemption arc plays into a larger issue that Dragon Age and Dragon Age Inquisition specifically has of their whole gray storytelling thing. DAI especially has a problem with two-siding an issue that is very much black and white. There is nuance to the Templars. The use of lyrium to keep them in line and make them more aggressive and paranoid by the Chantry. Propaganda, luring young children into this line of work where they will then end up being the aggressor. How many Templars realized what was wrong but couldn't leave because of their lyrium addiction, and how many of those same Templars died due to the Red Templars later on. There's plenty of tragedy in the Templars, but when you are a part of a system that perpetuates abuse, no matter your reason for being in that system, you become the abuser. You become complicit. And that can be tragedy, becoming complicit in something you don't want to be complicit in simply because of the manipulations of others, which is kind of Cullen's story. Cullen was likely lured to the Templars because of the propaganda that many Chantry-going folk have to deal with, and then he was put on lyrium and then went through tragedy, and then that tragedy was taken advantage of by a massive bigot who then turned him inside out and created a monster out of him. And his story in Dragon Age Inquisition is supposed to be one of coming out of that tragedy and trying to make himself better than he was before, of trying to put his life back together and make up for the sins of his past. But here's the thing, we see plenty of Cullen putting his life back together. We don't see any of his atonement. The most we get are one-liners of, I used to treat mages with disrespect, or I used to fear all mages, or like putting himself between one Templar and a mage who are fighting. There is very little of Cullen going to the rebel mages and offering anything he can do to help them. There's very little of Cullen having to face the consequence of mages maybe not trusting him anymore. He talks so much about how he will never be able to wash this blood off his hands, and yet within the context of Dragon Age Inquisition, takes no action to help get the blood off of his hands. Not even in, weren't you just with the rebel mages the other day? Sort of like overarching voice line. I understand Inquisition can't spend a lot of time doing that if they also have to, because there's a giant other story going on. But a couple of lines about, hey, what were you doing with Fiona the other day? And him being like, I was helping set up their quarters. Any atonement, anything to be like, hey, I was a massive douchebag who was part of a system that was tearing people apart, and now I have to atone for that. The Inquisition is not atonement, especially when the Inquisition can be pro-Templar and anti-mage. There is no atonement in just helping the Inquisition. Don't get me wrong, it's a step forward. It puts him in a position to help, but he needs to actually take that extra step. Cullen joined the Templars to be a hero and was then radicalized by it, destroyed by it. And yet he still feels some loyalty to his comrades who were there with him. Of course he does. It's why Samson and the Red Templars upset him so much. He yearns for what the Templars could have been. Protectors and helpers for the mages who desperately need a helping hand. He wishes for things to be simpler than they are, and is now being faced with the hell that is reality for probably the first time, considering how blinded he was before. But that reality also has to include what he's done, not just what the Templars are. And in a world where radicalizing and de-radicalizing are huge parts of our actual reality, as representation, he is a failure.
After what happened in Kirkwall, I couldn't. I will not be bound to the Order, or that life any longer. Whatever the suffering, I accept it.
I do want to say, though, that I love Fanon Cullen, who does have to go through all of this a lot, and I have loved Fanon Cullen since about since I met Cullen in Dragon Age 2. Editing run here again. Totally forgot to film an actual outro. Thank you so much for watching. I ended up spending like 3 months on this, I think. It ended up being from like mid-September to, I think it's a couple days before Thanksgiving now, so it's been a hot minute. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone's support, and if you want more content like this, please let me know. And if you want just more of me specifically, I know it's hard to resist me. I get it. Follow me over on Twitch, also at Cretan7. I do full playthroughs on Thursday, and currently we are working through Bloodborne. Follow me at twitch.tv/Cretan7. Subscribe here on YouTube and ring that little fucking bell and like and comment and all that fucking engagement nonsense. And also follow my Instagram and my Twitter. Everything is at Cretan7. Bye-bye! Do you have to bathe right now?